if you want to have longevity in jiu-jitsu or in wrestling or any kind of grappling, fundamentals are it. If you invest early and you invest often, if you do just the white belt moves, but over the span of like 10 years, at whatever higher belt, say black belt, you're doing white belt moves at black belt proficiency. If on day one, you just stuck with the fundamentals, just the bare bones, nothing fancy, forget about the De La Riva, forget about lasso guard, forget about any fancy takedown, any judo throws, forget about that, and just work on how to move your body. Could you imagine how much more dynamic, how much more powerful, how much more resilient, how much more whatever you would be because you focused on that? Let's face it, there's not a lot of time. We're all professionals, we're all busy doing our own things outside of the club, and it's difficult to get to class. I know it's not a good excuse, but there are other priorities in life than this hobby. When you look at the bigger scope of things, you can't take it too seriously. You really can't. So just because you can't do the coolest, most dynamic, whatever move there is right now on BJJ Fanatics, it's okay. You will nullify those people that are still trying to learn those complex moves at a maybe earlier point in their career when they shouldn't be, because you know the fundamentals. So, for example, everyone's afraid of the double legs. Now, people ask me all the time, why do you constantly fucking do the double leg? Or you're constantly shooting and getting stuffed. I was, for a very long time, yeah. And I felt like I was hitting the wall, I was constantly hitting the wall. There's this thing that my coach said, and I actually want to share it with you guys, is that we were talking about this, and the mentality between wrestling and jiu-jitsu is that there'll be parents or competitors or whatever in jiu-jitsu, and they'll come to the wrestling class and they'll say, how do we get around this, and how do we figure out how to get over, and is there something we can dig under that is there a move that can do that? A lot of the times a wrestling coach is gonna say, we're just gonna go through the wall. Sometimes you just gotta go through the wall. And it's not because it's pragmatic or it's not skilled. It's that, and it takes a lot of skill to do a takedown or a double leg or any of the wrestling moves effectively. The point is that sometimes things are just hard to be hard. And that builds something else in you that is more important. And that's discipline, tenacity, and drive. Something that I think a lot of beginners in jiu-jitsu, it's not that they don't have it, they're just not sure how to tap into it and not coached to do that. So for example, what happens when a white belt or a blue belt, fuck, even a purple belt, what happens when they do a double leg? First of all, they can't figure out which knee goes down first, and that already is a tell, so you're gonna get sprawled on. Fundamentals, learn how to penetrate. But the big thing is that when you sprawl, when you go for the shot, you kind of half-assed it, and you're not really committing for the full movement, meaning you're not driving. And so when we come here, what happens? We put our hands down, and then they come around, and we get stuffed. You've seen that plenty of times. But in the jiu-jitsu world, it's okay, because then I get to practice my guard. And so what happens? They roll under their back, and they get back into guard, and then whatever else may ensue after that. And it's okay. But let's break down that narrative. It just blew up on your face because now you're ass up, hands down on the ground, and they're passing your guard and riding you. So the intention wasn't there. You really didn't want to do a double leg. You'd probably be better served doing some other thing. What do we do then? Well, if you worked on the fundamentals, you would at least follow through, right? So you would get that leg driving through, and you gotta have that intention that you're gonna plow through somebody. You're not just gonna meet them at the wall and then just stand up, because they're gonna sit you down. Using your fundamentals, you make sure that you end up on the right side of that guillotine, because we know it's gonna happen. It's a big joke, it's a running joke about how wrestlers get guillotined all the time. They do, they run into it. But if you know jiu-jitsu and you know what they want out of it, the common reaction is just to wrap up the neck and then get into guard, tie you up, and choke you out. Common scenario. But if you do the fundamentals and you try to do the double leg as best as you can, and then finish, as long as you end up on the right side of that guillotine, so my head's stuck right now, right? I've gone in, they've wrapped it up. Here, they got my neck. Another fundamental is if you keep your head up, you still got a bit of a chance from them not locking up that guillotine as tight as they could. And at the same time, you're lifting them up, powering through, and then just slam them on their head. You have my permission. Slam them on their head. That will keep them honest and probably prevent them from trying that again. Because here's the other thing. Fundamentally, you just keep shooting. You just keep shooting. You don't stop, right? What happens when you shoot and then you get stopped or whatever, but they don't really wrap up on top of you. They just kind of keep you at bay. Once they pop up, you reshoot and you got a second chance at a double leg. Keep chaining things. That's a wrestling thing, you just keep chaining things. So as far as the fundamentals go, don't worry about being on your back and learning lasso or De La Hiva. I love De La Hiva. Don't worry about that until you can move your hips. If you're not able to shrimp properly, don't do these moves. You don't get better at De La Hiva if you don't have that ability to maneuver your hips and powerfully move your hips. That also leads up to triangles, right? You need to pop your hips up. Fundamentals again. It could be fundamentals of strength training, cardiovascular, technique, all of that. Fundamentals. Just focus on that. And I got sidetracked. I kind of went off into this weird instructional. Please don't listen to me. This is mainly for the total noobs that have no idea what's going on. And if you have some kind of wrestling background, just so that you know what to expect when you go to a jiu-jitsu club and so that you don't get completely wrecked and you start doing that weird humble crap or, oh my God, you know, like you suddenly fall in love with jiu-jitsu because you're so strong and they're so small and they choked you. No, it's just because it's just more about not knowing where you should be. Anyways, I digress. Knowing the fundamentals, but also applying it regularly, right? And so going to class more often. Like how many people do we know only go twice a week? And then they say stuff like, I'm not getting any better. I'm not able to choke Johnny. I'm not able to get this. I'm not able, or I'm not getting the stripe, or I'm not getting recognized, or I'm better than him. And why? That may be the fact, but until you create a habit of being there regularly, one, your coach isn't gonna be able to see you often, so they're not gonna really pay attention to you. So your recognition really doesn't matter because you're non-existent to them. You're not on their radar. So just be there. Funny story. I went to a falafel shop after work one day. I think it's a falafel shop or a shawarma place. Anyways, when I walked in, guess who was there? I saw this huge individual and he was ordering his meal. And I realized it was Ben Dyson, Professor Ben Dyson. And he's over with Kazushi. Amazing school, blend of wrestling and jiu-jitsu and yeah, just an overall great club. And when I saw him at the time, I was just like shell-shocked because I was, you know, this is Ben Dyson, right? I've seen him in all the YouTube videos. I've seen what he can do. He's a beast. So I had to say hi. I had to figure out something to kind of walk up to him and ask him a question about anything, right? So I tapped him on the shoulder and I said, took out my hand, I shook his hand. And by the way, his hand is huge. It felt like sandpaper, like just raw and just the scariest. I mean, I, at that point, thought maybe I shouldn't be asking him a question. It's kind of late. He looks kind of angry. And in fact, he was hangry because I think he just came from training and he just wanted to get out of there. And so what do? I'm a white belt, right? And I am like, hey, Ben Dyson, I love your stuff. I was wondering, do you have any advice for like a white belt? What I could do to get better? Oh God, it makes me cringe. I mean, okay, he's the nicest individual. He's an amazing human being, super kind. So after a few years, I realized it wasn't a big deal. Anyways, he says, well, you know, okay, I'm not gonna do the accent, but he's from the UK. He says to me, how many times are you training? And with a straight face, dead in his eyes, I said, no, I do solid 2 days. No, I drill and then I roll as hard as I can with the higher belts, meaning like blues. And yeah, sometimes on the weekend when I can. I mean, oh my God. And so he looks at me and he says, you may want to up that a bit. just a suggestion. And then I was like, oh my God. Yeah, that's so true. And that stuck with me. And so what I'm trying to relay to you is that you need to invest early and you need to invest often to improve. And it just makes things so much easier. I tell my kids this all the time. I keep telling them that you need to focus on your fundamentals. Work on your position and your transition, your footwork, hand fighting, all the basics that you need in wrestling so that you can build on that later on. All the dynamic stuff falls into place. Once your strength and once he grows into his frame, that's when it starts to change. Right now, I just want to instill in him a sense of good habits, right? Earlier on, well, it's still fun. My mind's like full of things I want to do, but first things first, can I get on the mats and work the fundamentals? And so I feel really confident about that. Who knows, I might be able to even compete at some point in the year. That would be great. If I could go back to Worlds at some point in the next couple of years, I would be super thrilled, and that's something that I can probably work small steps towards. But as there's this quote that I like, I would say, I don't need to know every step, I just need to know the next one. So for me, the next step is to go out there and get my 15 minutes of running. Hope you guys get out and do something as well. Stop scrolling, go back to work. I'll catch you in the next. See ya.